Welcome into our brand new Bulls Recap Podcast. I'm David Kaplan. That guy is Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times. He will be your host for the Bulls Recap Podcast. How apropos that you're here and you got a Derrick Rose jersey right behind you.
The number one hanging right behind me.
Right there. So this is going to be your baby. You travel with the team. You're around covering everything. And I think you do a sensational job. So for me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you called me and we spoke, my opinions don't always jibe with a lot of people.
That's why I love you.
So if I was going to do this, it had to be with someone that I know, is not afraid of confrontation, is not afraid of being critical. I think the media's gotten really soft. I think especially 100%. In this city, the media's gotten really soft. So I was like, if I'm going to do this, this is the guy I want to do it with. So, thank you for that.
We're ready to go. So I watched the game last night. Yes, I get CHSN. I watched the game, and you got an 0-6 team coming in. They don't have Lowry marking in. I know Zach didn't play. I'm not the biggest Zach guy. I just don't think he's a winning type player. It's not a personal shot at the guy. Just last night, it looked like they gave unfettered access to the rim all night long.
Well, I mean, this has been going on all year, especially in first half of games. I mean, just look at their last four. I think it was 20-point deficit, Memphis, 20-point deficit, Orlando. When I was in Brooklyn on Friday, I think it was 17 in the first half. And then yesterday was 15 in the first half. And it's the same old thing. It's just blow-bys. I mean, just straight line blow-bys.
Unbelievable.
And when you take Caruso out of there, and what Alex Caruso did was just physicality at the point of contact up top with screens and picks, communication. The communication now is all Vooch. Mm-hmm. And, he was talking us through yesterday. We were just kind of BSing with him after the game just about what the call-outs are. It's like guard, slide, or it's guard, big, slide. And he's trying to tell the guard it's either guard coming to pick you, it's a big coming to pick you. But at the same time, you still need that guard to communicate things.
Correct.
And they just don't have that right now. And when they built this team, they knew they were going to be defensive handicapped. And I think the main thing is when they took DeMar off the team and they took Alex off the team, they kind of knew what this is.
Right.
And I hope they understand what it is. I hope this is
be top 10.
It's a 30-game showcase of this is the best we have. Showcase our guys, which so far they've done. And then their reality has to settle in, and they have to do whatever they can to hold on to that top 10 pick from San Antonio because it's protected.
Right. You're probably not going to get lucky. Like if you're betting, you're not betting you're getting Cooper Flag, but put yourself in the sweepstakes.
You got to buy the lottery ticket.
100%.
And, and the thing that people forget, look, Cooper Flag, when I was in Vegas for Summer League a couple months ago, we saw the highlights from him with Team USA and Team Select when he was on that select team going against Team USA. I talked to a couple people. They said the stuff they showed on ESPN or they flashed the highlights, that's nothing compared to some of the stuff he was doing that's not in the box score. I mean, this dude is a different guy. And there are some scouts that consider him 1A easily, but Ace Bailey is 1B. So, and then there's other guys that love the 7-2 kid from Duke. And this draft has guys that can change your organization. And if you are Arturas Karnisovas and you're just going to ignore that and think that you could just build a team of mediocre players and do something with it, you're sadly mistaken, as the last 5 years of your regime has shown you. So I think they realize it. They can't say it because NBA eyes are on them because of the Lonzo Ball kind of early signing that they did.
Correct.
But I definitely think they understand the magnitude of this draft class and holding on to that pick.
Okay, I got a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about. One is when this draft was held, look, you're not a very good team, and now Matas Buzelis is getting his feet wet in the G League.
Yeah.
I think you had to go get shooting. I asked Max Strus, hey, did the Bulls talk to you? No, not really. He wanted to be here.
He wanted to be here.
He was
badly.
in the building when he has the ACL injury, and Artur's like, yeah, we're good. And he leaves, and Pat Riley's like, we'll take him. They don't make a move there. Why would you not take a guy like Dalton Connect? That was the guy who was screaming before the draft. That goes back to my old career. But I watched that kid. I went, That's a perfect fit.
So I had him going to the Bulls in my early mock draft the night of the lottery. I do a lottery for the Sun-Times the night that the lottery comes out, and I had him going. And then I think what happened to their process, which I think is a twisted process, especially right now, they saw a 23-year-old. And that was it. The Bulls saw a 19, 20-year-old, and they're not different from a lot of NBA teams where the Lakers are like, we need this shooting now.
Correct.
And JJ Redick's like, I love this shooting now. And, so it was a really good fit for them. But yeah, I mean, you take the guy that's, especially if you thought you were going to move DeMar and you thought you were going to move Caruso and play this style of basketball, why not add the shooter? Because Modest, I like him because I think he does have an it factor. He's got a swagger to him, probably the most attitude they've had since Bobby Portis when they drafted him. So I do like that part of him, but he's raw in a lot of ways. And
Super raw.
Yeah, and he needs, I mean, the G League team he played on last year, which I don't think exists anymore, he had flashes and he's got a lot of ability, and we saw that in Summer League. So, but he needs a lot of development.
And the thing is, it's the same process, and I hope it's not a mistake that they made with Patrick Williams when they bring Tyrese Halliburton in.
Yeah.
And Arturas tells me, oh, man, that kid's workout was stellar. His testing off the charts. Great kid. But we saw Patrick Williams at 18 and went, oh, that might be a grand slam home run. So you pay $80 million for Lonzo Ball when you could have had Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, I mean, they saw the body and they saw, and my argument was, I saw he finished games at Florida State, but he wasn't starting at Florida State.
Correct.
And that's like looking at a pitcher and saying, let's draft him as a reliever.
Right.
You don't do that.
No.
So, and the thing about Patrick is that's frustrating is we've seen what Halliburton has become.
Well, star.
And Patrick Williams is nothing but flashes every couple weeks.
And you paid him $90 million.
Yeah, I mean, for over 5 years, it's not awful, but it just compounds. You still got Zach's contract. You have to make a decision on Josh Giddey, who is going to put up ridiculous-looking numbers.
Right. Do you like him?
There's something I like about him.
Same here.
I think he wants to be great, and I think the positional size is ridiculous. The rebounding for his position is ridiculous. But the thing that scares me is the one time you were put on the biggest stage with a winning team and you had dudes all around you, they had to pull you and bench you.
They did.
And so that makes me nervous of if this team gets good, say they hit Cooper Flagg or say they hit Ace Bailey or they make another trade. They somehow can move Zach and get off that contract and they bring in the right guys around him. This team gets better and they're a top 5 pick in the East. Are you still that dude that's putting up those numbers? That's the only thing that makes me nervous. And
he's what, 23?
Yeah, and I will say this. He recognizes his weaknesses. He talks about his weaknesses, and he talks about improving them, but now can he improve them? I mean, he wants to be a better defender, and he wants to be a better three-point shooter.
Which he needs to be.
So I like at least that part of it is because there's some guys on that roster that do not understand their weaknesses. And if you ask them or write them about it, they're pissed at you.
Right. And that's the amazing how soft everyone's gotten. I always believe there's 4 great markets. Great. New York, Boston, Philly, Chicago. There's, good fans of the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
Detroit, they're fine. LA is LA. Those 4 markets, though, and we are by far the softest media of those 4.
If some of these dudes had to deal with New York, Philly, or Boston, they would shrink. Talk about shrink, they would shrink. And so, I think that's why a lot of guys like playing out in LA and Miami. You got the weather, but you also don't have the pressure because of that.
Correct.
There's people are like, oh, we lost. Oh, we'll go to the beach. You know what I mean?
Right.
Here, you are in that. This is it. You have to have a connection with this fan base. You have to mirror this fan base, and the worst thing you could do, which I've written about and I have tweeted about, is buy hope, because owners will sell you hope upon spoonfuls of hope.
Right.
And the more you suck it down, the more they will sell you that hope.
Correct.
I live in Minneapolis half the year. My wife's from up there. And you talk about the Twins have the best racket because they do that little engine that could. The fan base loves it because they had no chance at the beginning of the year. They're in it again, and they just turn out in droves, and they just support it. And the worst thing you could do as a fan is buy hope. And I just don't understand how this market has become what it's become, where hope is good enough.
Yeah, we're not a big market. We're a big market in size.
It's a big market with a bunch of mom and pop stores.
It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable to me. And I heard John Middleton, the Phillies owner, was talking to the media. And the guy said, wow, you got a new plane for the team? He goes, yeah, Bryce Harper came to me and said, yeah, it's okay. We need a better plane. Right. Okay, done. Schwarber wanted a hibachi chef. He goes, I hired one. This guy wanted this. Trey Turner wanted that. And the reporter said, your great-great-grandkids, there's going to be nothing left the way you're spending money. He goes, well, guess what? I'm not going to know them. I want to win. We don't have an owner here that would ever say, with him or Joe Lacob, our goal is every year, we got to win the title.
Right. And look, the Bulls and the White Sox, people don't want to talk about that it operates hand in hand, but it does. There are decisions that are made hand in hand. Agreed. And I reported, I think it was last year, and it was about more about Billy, and I just happened to throw in at the end, and sometimes when you're just writing and you're just, I knew from talking to people that Grifol was not who Jerry wanted to manage his team, and did not think he was a good manager, and rightfully, if he felt anything about this team, he would have fired him before last season even started. And I kind of threw it in that he's not going to last the year, but Jerry doesn't want to pay dead money. I think it was about Billy Donovan possibly being fired. That's how it started, and that he hates paying dead money to managers and coaches.
It drives him nuts. And because he tries doing it on the cheap, first of all, with managers and coaches. And I got to pay that guy to not work for me?
Yeah. So, and I wrote it that, Grifol is not going to make the year. Jerry knows he's not a good manager, but he knows he's got a crappy product. So why spend the money on dead money? And the idea that Billy was somehow getting fired, Billy Donovan, I'm not saying he's a made man, but you know how that organization works.
Yes.
If Arturis and Mark Eversley like you because they are made men, then you're a made man.
Correct.
So,
and they extended him not too long ago.
Yeah, the secret extension.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why we love you, but we're not going to tell the world we've
extended. Why is that?
That's a Jerry middle finger to the media that I don't have to tell you. I have to report the stuff that I only have to report by the league. How much this guy is signed for, how much, I don't have to tell you how much I pay my coaches. That's just a middle finger from Jerry.
That's unbelievable. So all right. So this team, I love basketball. I watch every game, good or bad.
Right.
Do they have any upside?
I think the thing that's been nice so far is before the Lonzo Ball injury, which is a little bit of a downer. It's a risk, so it's not that big of a deal. The goal was to showcase guys, specifically Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, and Lonzo Ball. And they're showcasing them.
Right.
They're showcasing them.
Vooch has had an amazing start.
Oh, unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
If this contract, he's got $20 million this year, $21 million next year. If it was only this year, I mean, that's the first asset to go. To me right now, if Lonzo Ball gets back healthy, can stay somewhat healthy, and they could get him up to the 18 to 20 minute range, he's perfect. You don't think a team like Oklahoma City would want to bring him off the bench for 20 minutes come playoff time?
Correct.
I mean, so that's the most movable piece right now. If Vooch continues to do what he does and there's an injury, you got this year, you'll have next year. I think a team could kind of swallow that depending on where they are in the apron. The Zach one is just a boulder that cannot be
You
moved.
were the first guy I remember saying.
But he got pissed at me. Yeah. I wrote that column. I said,
I remember.
I said, I remember we were in Portland. I said, here's the column I want to do. I want to do a column, like a barbershop talk between you and I of why you think you deserve the max. And so his argument, and I'll give him credit. How many NBA All-Stars at the time would
Olympian.
say, I will debate you on why I deserve this max contract. Most guys would be like, I don't owe this to you. Don't talk about my money. So I will give him credit that he decided to do it. And he gave a great argument because at the time he was coming off Team USA. He was fantastic defensively there. He was picking up dudes full court.
I'm like, where's that guy?
Didn't care about his scoring. He's like, I got him. I'm an athlete. I've got, the guy from Somalia. I've got the guy from France, whoever it was, picking up a full court. And then the first couple weeks of the season, he brings that defensive mentality to camp. And I'm like, okay. Then he brings it into the regular season. He's playing unbelievable defense. So I did the column on him, and I finished it by saying, if you're going to be that guy, that two-way guy, and play that defense, then you get your money. I'll give you that within a month. The knee flared up, and we didn't know how serious it was, but the defense just went. And so when you can see that he can do it, and there's just not a willingness to do it all the time, and there's falling asleep off the ball too much, and just because on the ball he's pretty good just because of his athleticism.
Yeah.
But off the ball, just he's kind of a puppy chasing the ball. He just loses his man. Mm-hmm. When you're in year 6, 7, you can give it a free pass, but Zach's been around a while now. And the fact that he still needs so many supplemental players around him to play defense, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and cover up his ass and his mistakes, that just tells me they made the ultimate mistake. You don't max out a two-guard who's one-dimensional. So it's never worked.
What if they said to you, Joe, we either max him or we have to let him walk. Nobody is offering us anything in a sign and trade. Would you have let him walk?
I wouldn't have. It wouldn't have got to that point. I would have traded him when his value was at the highest coming into that season. But they didn't even think about it. So coming into that season, I would have traded him coming right off the Olympics because you know what he was and you know his value was never going to be higher. And I don't know if they were taking phone calls back then. I don't know if they were even making phone calls back then. By the time he had the knee injury and then they had to make that leap, that blind leap of faith and sign him in the offseason, it was too late. It was over.
And now you're screwed.
And now you're screwed.
So I have nicknamed them, and I know I've been told it drives them nuts. I call them the settlers because they settle playing. That's fine. We're good. They went almost 3 years without trading a human being.
Yes.
How does that get tolerated?
Well, it's not even that they didn't trade a human being. It was that teams were calling. And like the Andre Drummond one is a sin. It's an organizational sin.
3 second-round
picks. And decided, now we're going to keep him for competitiveness, and then he was going to walk anyway. They knew they couldn't afford to bring him back, and he went to the team that was offering the picks.
That's unbelievable malpractice.
So that's malpractice. That's organizational malpractice. Caruso, the Knicks were offering more than Oklahoma City. They just didn't want to do that deal with the Knicks.
Because it's Tibbs.
Because it's Tibbs, and it's the Knicks, and it's in the East. Who cares?
Exactly.
Who cares? That's the idea that you don't trade within. The only place I would say that works is probably football. You don't want that dude haunting you in football.
Right. The Bears to the Packers.
Yeah. Any other sport, who cares? If you're going to get a draft asset out of it, I don't care if you hurt your organization. So, that one was mind-boggling. And so they are where they are right now. I will say there does seem to be an understanding behind the scenes of they have to remedy this, they have to fix it. If they somehow don't stay in the bottom 10 and don't keep that pick, and I've said this numerous times, resignation should be handed in because you don't know what you're doing then. You don't care about this organization long term. You don't care about the fan base. You're just worried about asses in the seats on a nightly basis that year, and then we'll worry about next year.
The Oklahoma City deal, they've got 700 draft picks. They could not get an asset on top of Giddey?
Well, their argument was Giddey's 23, you look at his numbers, and Caruso, which I think Oklahoma City probably argued on their side pretty well, he's going to come here and he's not going to put up the numbers that he's putting up for the Bulls. That's not what we're asking him to do. We're asking him to come off the bench and be another guy that locks down the opposition and hits corner threes. I mean, look at his numbers. They've been very pedestrian except in plus minus and the standings. Mm-hmm. And so, and the other thing too was both sides had to make financial decisions long-term with each guy. Caruso might be a little tricky for Oklahoma City because
his deal's up this year. Right?
Yeah. So I think it was going to be a 1-year rental for Oklahoma City before they reassess how they finish. If they win it all and he's a piece, then they'll visit that. But they're going to have to start paying some of these dudes. And so I think that probably went into the argument, but you would think they at least get a second round pick. And I've even asked Arturis about this, kind of just off the record, BSing with him, is do you not value second round picks? And there was one time where he was like, where he said on the record, well, he's like, second round pick, what can you get with a second round pick all the time? And I was like,
Jokic.
You were in the Denver organization and took credit for Joker, who was a second round pick. So I do think, I'm hoping he misspoke, but this front office, this is huge for them this year, because if they can't flip this and pick the right direction, then it's Gar-Pax 2.0. It's nothing different.
I'll argue with you, it's worse. They drafted a player as good as Jimmy Butler.
I will say the Gar-Pax drafting was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
The one that I think was a horrific decision was when Gar, and this was on Gar, let Calipari talk him into Teague. Because that's when Tibbs wanted Draymond
Green.
The whole staff did, and was pissed about it. And then they fired Ron Adams that offseason, and there was some. That's when you knew the Cold War was starting. And so, could you imagine if they would have had Draymond Green on that team with Tibbs and what he would have done with him?
And how about in this city?
Oh, my God.
Green would have dominated.
People love Joakim for his, blue collar lunch bucket mentality. Mm-hmm. Draymond Green is with an attitude who'll throw a punch besides that. So, yeah, he would have been the perfect guy. But I will say that Gar-Pax, when you look back at it, their drafts were pretty damn good. It was after that, the issues.
I knew there were big troubles. I'm friends with Tibbs, full disclosure.
Right.
I go to dinner with Tibbs. And
you know how I feel about Tibbs. Yeah. I still talk to Tibbs.
So do I. I love him. I do a charity walk for Bernie's Book Bank every year, and he's the coach of the Knicks. A multi-$1,000 check shows up. Hey, man, keep doing that for the kids.
And people don't realize that about Tibbs.
He's the best.
He is, they see him as this gruff, just, and he keeps company with Belichick and Saban. Those are guys that he likes. But I will say this about him. He is as self-aware. One time we were just BSing, and he told me, he goes, he was just talking, and I go, because he's got nephews, and I go, didn't you ever want to get married? Or he's like, no, because it would have ended poorly. He goes, I know what I am, and I'm not going to get married, and I'm not going to have kids and have the chance of, messing up their life, because my tunnel vision is my tunnel vision, and it is basketball. He's like, I've compared him to a shark. A shark just swims around for one thing, to kill and eat. And Tibbs is to kill and eat, and that's basketball.
You do know I have a big shark tattooed on my arm.
I did not know that.
Because sharks.
I have a Tibbs tattoo.
There you go.
No, I don't.
A shark, even when they're sleeping, they keep moving. It drives your competition nuts, and that's Tibbs.
Yes.
He's in the office all the time.
But when he talks to you, he'll remember your kids' names. And people just think of him as just, and he's not like that. During the season, he is.
Yeah.
In the off season, he's fantastic.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I remember I was on the floor at the United Center, and Gar and Pax, especially Gar, knew that I was tight with Tibbs. I'm walking by the bench. It's got to be 6:00. Game's at 7:30. And I hear Gar go, there's your boy over there. And I'm like, Tibbs? He's like, yeah, he's the problem here. And I'm like, you're saying this sitting on the bench to me, walking what? That told me all I needed to know about Ozzie and Jerry's baseball team.
Kenny.
You got Kenny,
yeah. Rick,
Ozzie. And then with the Bulls, you get the Tibbs thing. He's only one of the 5 best coaches in the league. What are you doing?
I will say, as big a circus as the Tibbs, Gar, Pax thing became, and that was mostly Tibbs and Gar, and Pax just had to back his guy.
Pax and Tibbs now are cool.
Cool, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I think they understood that Gar was lying to people. Gar was manipulating things behind the scenes. I think Gar had a good basketball mind, but Gar is a survivor. And when you are a survivor and you start making moves to keep that job and to stay in that office, the organization is done.
Done.
And I think that's what Gar became.
But why did John, who I love John Paxson,
because John comes
why
from
stay so loyal to that guy?
he comes from the school, which Jerry's from the school, is there is a pecking order. And no matter what, it is Jerry, it is the general manager or the executive, the vice president, executive, whatever you want to call him, and then the coach. And that will always be the pecking order, even if the coach, I mean, he let Hawk fire LaRussa. I mean, so that will always be the pecking order in those organizations. And so, funny story, you brought up the Mark Eversley, who I really didn't know at the time. It was like his first or second year. They knew I was tight with Butler. And so it must have been his second year. We were in Miami, and I'm walking up the aisle after halftime. And, Jimmy was getting his usual calls, and they had the lead. And Eversley's like, your boy gets every call. I was like, he's not he's my guy, but I mean, and he was like pissed about it. I was like, Mark, it's all right. I'm not blowing the whistle.
It's unbelievable.
But that organization, they take things personally.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing to me. All right, before we wrap this up, when you look back at all the moves that were made, what was the one move you can't believe they did that? How stupid it was.
Arturis and
or Gar and Pax. What move did?
Well, trading Jimmy Butler. I mean, firing Tibbs. That was a Jerry thing.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry just he wasn't going to play referee, just like Ozzie trading Ozzie. That was a Jerry thing. He makes those final decisions. Trading Jimmy Butler, and an organization wishes and hopes
to get one
for a two-way player. That's a backcourt guy. There's 5 of them in the NBA. You had that extinct animal
and wanted to be here.
That wanted to be here because he had had a shoe deal pending. If he stayed in Chicago, would have had his own name brand shoe. And once they traded in Minnesota, that shoe deal went away. And Jimmy, to this day, he's more pissed about that than the actual trade. But you had that guy in here who was willing to recruit, who was willing to, everyone's like, oh, he wanted too much money. But he would have taken a hit if he would have got his guys here. He wanted to build a championship in Chicago. But because you felt he was too Hollywood, or you had to give him a little bit, you had to let him, not the keys to the car, but you had to lend the car a couple nights a week.
Yeah.
You did not want to do that and empower him, and you went and moved. And then we have seen what he's done since then. You talk about a guy who has played in 2 finals with very little talent around him, and the numbers he's put up along the way. He put the Lakers one, people say it was in the bubble, Historic numbers he put up. That triple-double, that 40-point triple-double he had, historic. So I think that is by far the worst deal that they made. I think that totally set the organization back years and years and years that they're still paying for.
All right, man, this is going to be your deal. The keys to the podcast have been handed off. This will be Joe Cowley's Bulls Recap Podcast. So excited to have you here, man.
Excited to be here. It'll be fun.
Take that.